like transparent. And I was like, I am, because I live with my own story. It's not news to me. But a lot of people never knew that. Did you find like the reception when people were seeing parts where you decided to be vulnerable or share parts of you that you hadn't before, where I find it can be a little bit of a shock to see how it resonates with people.
What's interesting is my mom first read the book after it was out, and she came to visit me and she started reading the book, and I was like, how are you enjoying it? And she's like, well, there's some things that I didn't know. And, um, and so it was interesting to see her going through. And that's another thing too, that as I was writing it, like I was learning about myself, but honestly, I learned a lot about my family, about my mom, because we live our own story. So, you know, the time that you got hit by a car or something, right? Let's say somebody got hit by a car. You know that from your perspective, from how it felt when you remember this happened and whatever. That's all you know is your perspective. But I realized there were stories in my life that I never bothered to look at it from my mom's perspective or my dad's perspective. And so there were a lot of stories where I would call my mom and be like, what were you thinking when I was 14 dating this guy who had a kid, was in a gang, never graduated high school? Like, what was going on in your mind during that time? You know?
Well, it's also telling for our parents too, because when we share something, when we share our lives and our struggles and challenges, that no matter how great your sort of family, your environment was growing up, inevitably we're all going to walk through challenge, just being relentlessly human.
Mhm.
You know, for me, I never thought about the fact that by me being honest about my struggles, how that would impact my mom and her feeling like, wow, where was I less than as a parent, or where could I have more better insulated my son? And the reality was she couldn't have been better. She was the best. It's just life.
Yeah, that's such a good point. We're always our toughest critic. And my mom thinks that she was the worst mom ever. And anytime she'll make comments to me like that, I'm always like, Mom, I don't see you that way. Like, I can't pinpoint a thing you did wrong. Like, you did the best you could with what you knew how, and you were raising 4 kids by yourself. Like, you did your best. Like, I hold nothing against you. But again, we're our toughest critics, and in everything in life and parenthood. I assume, I'm only a dog mom, so I wouldn't know. I would assume it's that as well.
That dog love is real. Trust me. Anytime I've tried to make light of that dog love, like I will have dog parents come for me and be like, nah, son, like that's a false equivalency.
Totally. It
Yeah.
really, listen, I've been reading your book, and I have 2 questions that I wanted to ask you. So I've been doing stand-up for 15 years. I've been touring for 15 years, and it's been a lot. It's been an adventure. It's been a crazy journey that I never expected for myself. But I was reading in your book when you talked about doing stand-up as a kid. And first, so as I'm reading it, it's like, oh, I was 8 years old and I went up and I did, the kids' night at Caroline's at 2 p.m., whatever. And so in my mind, I'm like, oh, that's cool. He tried stand-up as a kid. And then I keep reading, and it was like, no, I was going up at the clubs. I was a child going up at clubs, staying out till like 11 o'clock. And I know what it takes as a grown adult getting up on stage and going from whole season of life. Like, oh my God, like who took him to the club? Who was there with him? Was he by himself? Did he take the subway? Like, I had all these questions. But were there any stories of that time that you didn't share in the book that you could share? Anything that happened in them?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was a kid stand-up comic. A lot of times my mom would take me. Eventually, when I was 12, I started to take the Midtown bus to school. And then I basically was like the king of public transportation. So literally, like on a Tuesday, Wednesday night, I would, take the bus to Gotham Comedy Club or just walk with my buddy Alex. And I'd get up and do like my 5 minutes. And most of the time it would go pretty well because like I had this tight five, and I knew a lot of comedians here I am telling you this, like, not that you don't know, like a lot of times they're working material out on stage, but
Yeah.
it like had to be perfected because I knew I was like, I can't do crowd work. Like, I'm into Pokemon. Like, these are grown-ups. They got real problems. Like,
Yeah, how about recess? Am I right, you guys?
yeah, like how crazy. Like, who else like hates when their Nintendo 64 controller gets jammed? But but I but I yeah, and I used to get heckled. Excuse me. One thing I didn't talk about was like certain comedians did not mess with me. They were like, this is a gimmick. I'm not about it. I'm really, out here trying to make a living doing it. And here's this like sixth grader. I am not impressed.
Right, right. Such haters we can be sometimes. By we, I mean other comics, not us.
Do you ever deal with like, I mean, what's your go-to when dealing with a heckler? Or are you just like, security, get them out?
Luckily, I rarely get hecklers, and I feel like my audience comes out to have a really good time, and I like to say that my audience is reflective of me and what energy I put out, and then I call them towards me. So I rarely get hecklers. If I do, it's usually just somebody who's really drunk. They couldn't handle their alcohol, and it's usually just a lot of like woo at random times. But rarely do I get somebody shouting out that they disagree with what I'm saying, or whatever that is. That's very rare. So which I'm grateful for, because I'm not a confrontational person. Like, I like to pretend I am, which is, my book is called Who Do I Think I Am? Stories of Chola Wishes and Caviar Dreams, because I wanted to be a thug real bad. I wanted to be that Chola chick that would fight you, but really I am not confrontational, and I do not like, I mean, I will if I have to, but I would much rather just be friends. So I don't like confrontation. So I'm grateful that I don't get a lot of hecklers, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel like anyone who goes to a comedy club and heckles people, I'm just like, what are you trying to prove? Like,
Right.
who wasn't kind to you? Like,
Yeah.
are you turning me into like your absentee father or your overbearing mother right now? Because like, there is some histrionic shit here.
Yeah. Who am I standing in the gap for right now?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I remember my buddy once interviewed this guy who scaled Everest. And he's talking about getting to that final peak and looking out at the horizon. And my buddy says, and when you got to the top, was your dad's love there?
So good.
So good.
Oh, I could only hope to have quick one-liners like that. Okay, I have one more question for you that I was thinking.
Yes.
This one's more of like I honestly, as an artist, I've been in this industry for, not since I was a kid, but just, I mean, I was 20 when I moved out here. So almost 20 years that I've been in this industry. And again, in reading your book, and you were talking about like how driven you were, and you went to audition for that performing arts school, and it was like you were going to auditions, waiting in the room for 3 hours just to like get that shot, and you were hungry for it, and so ready for it. And I remember being in that season of my life as well. Mine was in my 20s, but that season of being hungry. And my first gig, like, I was an extra on Friends, and that was my most favorite job still to this day. I've done some movies, some TV shows, sold out comedy tours. My favorite job was when I was an extra on Friends, because one, is my favorite show ever. Also, it was at a time in my life when I was so hungry, I was so dreamy, I wasn't jaded yet. I had that fire, that passion, and that drive. And then you get to a place where you experience a little bit of success, and you experience, you're on a hit show for years, and people are starting to know who you are. You get all these opportunities, and then, just like in life, our careers, it's like this. It's ups and downs, roller coaster, it's ebb and flow, all of those things. How do you, and again, this is asking for me as a current creator, artist person, how do you maintain the hunger and the drive when you have a little bit of success, when you're not hungry, like you've been snacking, so how do you stay hungry when you've been snacking for the past few years?
I think it's about connecting back to that thing, to your point, like when you were an extra on Friends and it wasn't the position where, not to project, where maybe you'd be now, we're like, well, I'm above this. Like I've had enough success where I shouldn't have a bigger role, or I should be have a nicer trailer, or all these things. Like, naturally, prestige and finance and all these things tend to like come into our lives, and necessarily, you know, because we want to have a family and we want to be able to afford a car and maybe, you know, God willing, buy a home one day. Like, those are nice things that, whether you're in the business or not, many people are striving for.
Yeah.
I constantly try to connect back to
one of my first
questions were Billy Madison and Ace Ventura and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and like all these people that just, you know, TV was my escape. It was my babysitter. It was the thing that I loved, and becoming an actor felt like I was paying back the thing that had been so good to me. I say in the book, like, me becoming an actor was like someone going to work at the hospital that had cured their cancer.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like a payback. So whenever I connect to that part of me that's not worried about impressing you, that's not worried about my bank account or any of these things, but it just cares about performing and doing the thing that I've loved and has been fun for me since I was 8 and is still fun for me at 35, that's when I know I'm in good shape. But I love chatting with you. I'm so excited. I'm going to check out your book because it's just awesome. And you know, your kind of stories are the ones that I identify with and that like feed my soul. So I can't wait to check out your book.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me today, everybody. Happy People Are Annoying. Josh Peck, myself, Who Do I Think I Am? Stories of Chola Wishes and Caviar Dreams. Get our books.
Love it. So good to meet you. Thank you for doing that.
Bye.
Bye.